So before we get into really solving inequalities, which will be like the next video coming up, we are going to solve some inequalities kind of like maybe you did in Algebra 2. So just really thinking about kind of what we did back in Algebra 2. So we're going to solve these on a number line. And the first thing is, you kind of treat the inequality like an equal sign. But I can't find my pen right now. Let's see. Here we go. The thing to remember is that when you have a less than equal to or greater than or equal to, you're going to use an open circle. And when you have a greater than and equal to or a less than and equal to, you're going to use a closed circle. So I'm just going to solve these like you would just a normal Algebra 2 problem. So I've got 2x less than 10 now, and I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and I get x less than 5. So on your number line, you're just going to give me a few numbers. You don't have to do all these. And then I'm going to put an open circle at 5, and then I want all numbers less than 5. So my arrow is going to go this way, and you can kind of shade it in a little bit darker if that makes more sense to you, because it is difficult to see. So that one's not so bad. This one's really similar, and I hope you see, though, that we're going to divide by a -2 this time, and that's when things change. So if you divide by a negative, you have to flip the sign. Okay, so I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm going to get x, I ran out of room here, -2x less than or equal to 10. When you divide by a negative, not divide a negative, but divide by a negative, I have to flip x greater than or equal to -5. So I'm going to, again on here, just give yourself some numbers. -5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, this is going to be a closed circle because I have the greater than or equal to, and I want all numbers greater than or equal to -5. So my arrow on my line is going to shade this way. Okay, so all of those that way. Same when you have a two-sided equation. I'll try to switch markers here. Maybe that'll help a little bit. You're going to try to get all the numbers on one side and all of the x's on the other. So I'm going to do that. I have 7x plus 6 less than -22. 7x less than -28. Now here's where people get a little confused, because are you dividing by a negative number or dividing a negative number? Okay, I'm dividing by +7, so I don't have to worry about switching the sign, and I get x less than -4. So that's the tricky part here, is remembering if you divide by a negative number, not divide a negative number. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, and I want all x's less than -4, so I'm going to have an open circle, and I'm going to choose this way. So again, this is stuff you kind of did back in Algebra 2 as a reminder, and then we're going to get a little more complicated here. I've got an and. So an and means it fulfills both. Fulfills both at the same time. So let's see, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I want all x's greater than or equal to 5, so I'm going to color that in there. And less than 9, that's only these. Okay, only these things in here are both greater than or equal to 5 and less than 9. When it says or, it could be either or. So same number line, 6, 7, 8, 9, same circles, but I could choose anything going in both directions here. Okay, so lots of numbers. Oops, I have my circles backwards here. Lots of numbers fulfill both of these. And for example, if I chose x equal to 9, that would be x greater than 5. Okay, so you can kind of put the arrows both ways on this, but either or means it could be either or. All right, so here's where we get into when things get a little more tricky and we're talking about quadratics. So first thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to factor this. So I'm looking at factors of 8 that add to negative 6. So x minus 4 and x minus 2 less than 0. And so that less than means I'm going to use open circles. And I always think, what are my zeros? My zeros in this case are 4 and 2. These are, like Mrs. Vogt calls them, critical points. If you are watching from Mr. Feig or Miss Delmont, they might call them something different, but if you see me write CP, I usually do that as critical points. And I'm also going to graph this for you. I have a little graph there. So I'm going to x squared minus 6x plus 8. And it looks something like I have a 0 here at 2 and a 0 here at 4. And it kind of looks like this. So I'm already kind of thinking in my head, I'm looking for the parts that are less than 0. So if I think about this, where are my x's less than 0? It's going to be down here, right? It doesn't really color in. I'm not really highlighting, but it's those points right there where it's beneath the x-axis. That's where my x's are less than 0. So in terms of my critical points, I'm going to kind of plot those on here. 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to put my open circles here because I know that's where things are happening. So I want to know if I pick any number less than negative 2, and that would be here on my graph. So any number all the way to negative infinity up to negative 2, what happens when I pick one of those numbers? So I'm going to pick a number right now. I'm going to pick negative 4, and you could pick something else anywhere in that. You could pick negative 100. It doesn't matter. And so I'm going to take each of these factors at once and one at a time and try to come up with what might happen. So if I plug in negative 4, I have negative 4 minus 4, and that's negative 8. So I get a negative number, and any number you would choose in between that interval, negative infinity to negative 2, would give you a negative number in this one. And then over here, same thing, negative 4 minus negative 2 is, again, another negative number, and I'm putting them in parentheses because just like this, I'm going to multiply. What happens if you multiply a negative times a negative? You get a positive. And in my next interval is going to be, oh, this should have been positive too. My next interval is going to be between 2 and 4, right between my critical points, 2 and 4. And this is where I'm hoping we get something negative, because back to my drawing over here, I know that my parabola dips beneath the x-axis over here. So I'm going to pick a number between 2 and 4. I'm going to pick 3. That's an easy one. 3 minus 4 is a negative number. So again, I'm back up here. And then I'm going to plug in here again. 3 minus 2 is a positive number. So if you have a negative times a positive, you get a negative. And that's kind of what we predicted over here. And then the other end is anything this way. If I pick 4 to positive infinity, I don't know, maybe pick 10. You can pick whatever you want. 10 minus 4 is a positive number, and 10 minus 2 is a positive number. And when I multiply a positive times a positive, I get a positive. So back to my original, where is this less than 0? It's only this interval right here. Less than 0 means it's a negative number. So between 2 and 4, and that's what I'm going to shade on my number line. That's where it's where it's negative. That's the only place. And if you look at the graph, that's the only place it dips beneath the x-axis. Okay, so another example, slightly different. X squared minus 49 greater than or equal to 0. So first step is going to be to factor. And this is x minus 7, x plus 7. So my critical points here are 7 and negative 7. So those are immediately what I'm going to put on my number line here. And I'm going to just evenly space them. And I know, though, that I can fill in my circles and shade them in, right? Because I have a greater than or equal to sign. And then I'm going to kind of come up with intervals. And actually, I was going to graph this one for you as well. So when you graph this one, you get a +7 and a -7, 0. And then a parabola that kind of goes like this. So again, I'm hoping for something negative in between my critical points here. And actually, I'm looking for positive. So the positive ones I'm hoping are outside my critical points, kind of like this. Okay, so where I shaded red the first is anything from -infinity up to -7. And I'm just going to pick a random number. How about -10? Well, -10 minus 7 is a negative number. And -10 plus 7 is also a negative number. When I multiply those, I get positive. And then I'm going to pick a number between my critical points, -7 and 7. I'm going to pick 0. I like 0. 0 makes my life easy because 0 minus 7 is a negative number and 0 plus 7 is positive. So multiplying those, I get negative. And then 7 until infinity. Okay, anything over here on the other side of my red. If I pick 10, for example, 10 minus 7 is positive, 10 plus 7 is positive, so I get a positive number here. So I'm looking for greater than 0. That's these two pieces. So that's when x is greater than 7 and x is less than 7. Last example is, this is an x cubed function. So if we graph this one, okay, so I've just factored this one, and now I am wondering, can I factor this middle portion, this x squared minus x plus 12? And that can't be factored. And I graphed it for myself just to check it out. And it doesn't have any real zeros. So that's why the graph of this only crosses kind of like at 0 and only has one critical point at 0. Okay, so I'm going to put my open circle at 0. Because this can't be factored, so there's no more real critical points. Which makes it slightly easier because then I'm going to go from -infinity to 0 and 0 to infinity. And those are my only intervals. And if I plug in a negative number, so I don't know, let's pick -10. I get a negative number, and then what would happen here is I think I'm going to get a positive number because I'm going to get 100 minus 10 plus 12, so positive number. When I multiply those, I get negative. And if I pick a positive number, let's say positive 10, I get positive, and then again I get 100 minus 10 minus 12, I get another positive number. Okay, so the only place here that matters is at 0, and I want to know when it's less than, so that's this, and I'm going to color this way. So graphing really helps. You're going to get a worksheet. It's not really a worksheet if you're in Ms. Vold's class because you're copying it into your notebook, and there will be an answer key provided as well.